Hello, it's Fakenukes Phil coming to you from the basement, deep inside the Soviet states of America once again. So today I think we'll start with the Pearl Harbor anniversary, 84, I guess, 84th. And it's going to be on Sunday this year, which is the day that it happened back in 1941. So that's kind of significant. Behind me, we see the smoldering hulk of the USS Arizona after the quote unquote magazine exploded, if you want to believe that. Because if the magazine exploded, these two cranes over here, they would have been wiped out. When a magazine explodes, it's a huge explosion. Also, there are survivors from the Arizona who claim they were sitting right on top of the magazine. They were in an anti-aircraft position and they survived. So you were directly above the magazine and you survived. Don Stratton and somebody else, I forget. Yeah, we're going to get into it. And these stories of these survivors from the USS Arizona are whoppers. Whoppers. And so we never challenged them. We just, it's like the Titanic. We never challenged any of those whopper stories. All the survivors, we just nodded. Oh, yeah. That's an amazing story. Yeah, it is an amazing story. And just like the stories from the Arizona are amazing stories also. So anyway, so as a correctionist, what historians should have been asking after this event happened, if they had the correct understanding of past history, they would have been saying, did the Navy just pull a stunt the same as they did in Havana Harbor in 1898 to start the Spanish-American War? Now, remember, the Navy had an obsolete battleship on their hands called the USS Maine. And it was a steam-powered battleship. And it was, by the time it was built, it was already obsolete. And so the Navy is saying, well, what are we going to do with this thing? And they said, well, we need to start a war with Spain. So let's take this thing down to Havana Harbor and blow it up and tell the world that 270 sailors died. And then voila, we've got a war. And so to refresh your memory, let's go into the Phil files. And so the Phil files. Hopefully things are loading up good today. I don't want to be waiting a long time. Okay, so here's the USS Maine. Now, as you remember, it was in Havana Harbor, and they gave us all these illustrations, all the newspapers. Here's one. They didn't give us any photographs. Of course, I wouldn't expect there to be a camera trained on the boat when it exploded. By photographs, I mean photographs of the aftermath. In other words, in these illustrations, in all of them, they show the human beings flying in the air. And supposedly 270 sailors were killed, and there was a lot of dead bodies floating in the water. So if you had a camera in Havana Harbor, obviously you'd be taking a picture of these dead bodies, because they had to bring them to shore and lay them in rows in order to get an identification on them. And guess what? Nobody remembered to take a picture of that, which is impossible. I mean, if you had a camera, you'd say, oh my gosh, somebody's got to take a picture of this. So I know a lot of people break these events down by numbers and numerology. I break these events down by photographs and the lack of photographs. And people get upset with me, and they think that my method is less reliable than the numeric method, finding all the hidden codes and all the numerology throughout the event. No, when when photos are missing, when they don't exist, that tells a huge part of the tale. Okay. And numbers, you can put numbers in any order you want, and you can make them add up to anything you want. So anyway, I want to see the photos of all these dead sailors. They don't exist. So what they did was they gave us illustrations. Here is another illustration. Again, the artist made sure to put in human beings flying in the air. And up here in this thumbnail, it describes how they recovered the dead bodies. See, they went out in a rowboat and they had this little hand crank, and they attached a rope to the dead body and they cranked it into the rowboat. And this is how they recovered the dead bodies. Well, that's interesting. Do we have a photograph of that? No, we don't. And you would take a photograph of that, because that is something you don't see every day. But they didn't take a photograph of it, which is very telling as to what we're dealing with here. It's a Navy stunt. See, we know they had a camera right here. This was taken by a camera. This is the main sticking out of the water. We know they had a camera, but see, this photograph proves absolutely nothing. There's no bodies in the water here. This photograph proves when you take a picture of a blown up ship, that means nothing. It's like, who blew it up? I don't know who blew that up. And here's that rowboat I think they had. And this might be the hand crank. But, where are the bodies? Where are the bodies? I don't see any bodies in the water. Where are the bodies in the water? And did they bring the bodies back to shore and they had to lay them in a row, right? Well, where's that photograph? They're just doing a drill. They're doing a drill. Here's another photo of the hulk, of the wreckage. No bodies in the water. This photo proves nothing. Now, some of you say that those are grainy photos. Well, they had a good camera, like this photo here. Well, this is a pretty good photo. It's got pretty good resolution. There's a sailor here. They're standing on the hulk of the wreckage. There's no bodies in the water. And so they had a good camera there. And they didn't take this camera and take a picture of the dead bodies. And there's another one. And I don't see any bodies in that rowboat. These are just guys posing for a photo. And then we have this one. And this picture is a very good resolution. You can see the mast of the main coming out here. You can see in the background the ridge line of the hills back here. So this camera has a pretty good resolution. And so let's zoom in on what this rowboat is doing. Is it collecting a body? No. This is a scuba diver. This is a scuba diver. And so this is the support crew for this scuba diver. And you know what he's doing? He's going down underwater to check the hull, because what happened is they scuttled this boat. And so the explosion went outward and it bent the hull outward. And so that's why the scuba diver is going down there to make sure that it's buried, make sure that nobody can see it. And he's reporting back. And they had to scuttle this ship right away. They had to scrap it. They had to remove it from the harbor, because they didn't want people in the future to go down there and see that this boat was blown from the inside out. And so this is not a collection of a dead body. This is proof that they were pulling a stunt. And it's also proof they had a good camera. And with this good, they forgot to take pictures of the dead bodies. Okay, when photos don't exist and we know they had a camera there, well, then that means we can draw the logical conclusion is that this was a Navy stunt. And all they do is they give us illustrations of the dead bodies flying through the air. like here. Well, the illustrations don't cut it. Okay, so you see, a correctionist would correctly conclude that the Navy pulled a stunt here at Havana Harbor to start a war. And so we have to make sure they didn't do the same thing at Pearl Harbor, right? And so that should have been the first question we asked at Pearl Harbor. Is the Navy pulling another stunt like they did at Havana Harbor? And again, we can't rule it out. So what happened in Havana Harbor was a Navy drill. They scuttled a boat and they did a mass casualty drill. Well, so here at Pearl Harbor was the same thing. It was a mass casualty drill. They had been practicing for a Japanese attack for 2 years prior to December 7th. And so was this yet another drill? Because how could they be caught by surprise by the Japanese when they had been practicing for exactly this attack for 2 years? Obviously, they did another drill and they told the world it was a real attack. And so that's why we get newspapers like this from where is this? San Luis, Argentina, maybe Colombia. I think this is a Colombia newspaper. And look what it says: December 6th, 1941, invasion Japonesa in the United States. So how did Colombia know that the Japanese were going to attack the next day? It's because the word got leaked out. And that's what always happens in these events. And we had the warnings from a week prior from the Honolulu Advertiser. It says Japanese may strike over the weekend. And this is dated November 30th, 1941. So this is more than a week before the event. So what they're doing is they're preparing the civilians of Honolulu to be on the lookout, because the Navy is going to be doing a stunt over there at Pearl Harbor, and so don't be startled. They wanted to prevent a panic, so that's why they began to warn the civilians a week before, so that they would not panic when the Navy started doing their little stunt. And here's where U.S. declares a state of war on December 8th. Let it be known that the United States is the first country to declare war on December 8th, leaving the Axis powers no choice but to declare war back 3 days later. People always say, well, the Germans were stupid to declare war on the United States. Well, the United States declared war first. Right here, December 8th. So the Germans had no choice. Here's another photo of the smoldering Arizona. As you see, there are no bodies in the water. Where are the bodies? There are no bodies, just like in Havana Harbor. There are no bodies in the water. Okay? And so they blew up an empty ship, just like the USS Maine. And they did show us this. Here's a guy they said was a dead sailor from Pearl Harbor. But, well, look, he's got both of his legs. He's got both of his arms. There's no burns. There's no cause of death here. Okay, this is just some guy laying down for a quick photo. This is not a convincing photo. And then we've got this. They've got some blankets laid out here with, you can see some shoes sticking out. Well, shoes don't prove nothing. This doesn't prove that this guy's dead. I don't see a cause of death or anything. Again, when you're doing a drill, you'll do shit like this. And they're just pretending to tend to the casualties, right? Just like during a mass casualty drill. Here's some sailors pretending to be injured during the attack. This guy's got his knees up. This guy's covering his face, his legs crossed. It looks like they're bored. These guys are bored doing a Navy drill. Okay. They showed us this was supposedly as a Japanese pilot, but as you zoom in, you'll see that it's covered head to toe with a jumpsuit, and you can't discern what that is. I mean, that's a mannequin floating in the water. You can't see what that is. Okay, that's it, and it's a mannequin floating in the water. And here's somebody injured from Pearl Harbor. He's laying down with his feet out of the blanket. And is he smoking a cigarette? Probably. And he's bored. He's not connected to any IV equipment. So, you know, this photo does not prove a mass casualty event. This photo proves a drill, as the Navy was doing a drill. And then we have another dead Japanese pilot, supposedly here. And I see a pair of shoes back here, and I see something covering his face. But this photo can also be staged. This could be a staged photo. I don't see a cause of death. Why were the British there? The British were there because they were training the Americans how to do a false flag fake event, because the British were experts at doing shit like this. So I don't see a cause of death here. And this could easily be a staged photo. And here's a guy who took a Japanese machine gun. Damn it. Bullet to his arm. Here's the infirmary here. And supposedly he got shot here, and he's holding the bullet that they took out of his arm. They got a little sling on his arm, and he's smoking a cigarette. And if you believe this, well, I've got a bridge to sell you, okay? Because this is an obviously staged photograph here. This doesn't prove nothing. In fact, it works against it. This proves that they were faking shit, okay? This works against the narrative. Okay, and so all these photos of the ships burning in the harbor, I want you to always pay attention. You've seen these photos 1,000 times, but as you see them with your new eyes, you will notice that there's no bodies floating in the water here. There's no bodies of sailors floating in the water here. And there's no airplanes in the sky. Where are the Japanese airplanes? They showed us stock footage of Japanese airplanes, but they're not from the day of the attack. And they showed us this from supposedly a civilian from Honolulu that got killed by Japanese strafing. And they shot up a car, that's for sure. But this guy here is just bending over, pretending to be dead. Okay, this is an obviously staged photo, also works against the narrative. And then that's that same photo of the Japanese pilot. Different angle. You can see his shoes here, but you can't see a cause of death. And this doesn't prove nothing. This could just be some guy laying down for a photo. And of course, the Americans brought out some propaganda photos here. They laid out a row of like 15 pine caskets in this ditch here. And as you can see, the last two are going to be sticking out the top of the hole when they put this dirt back on. So this is an obviously staged photograph, and there's nothing in these pine boxes, okay? Nothing in those. And so the evidence is really weak. Here's another, the Hilo Tribune that predicted on November 30th that the Japanese were going to strike over the weekend. And again, they were preparing the local population to not freak out when the Navy started blowing up some empty battleships, because that's what they did. They blew up some empty battleships. And then they provided us with the Godzilla version of Pearl Harbor, and this is an obvious American production here, and to portray the Japanese as these maniacal, crazed. See how he does this little smile here. This is obviously produced by the Americans, and to portray the Japanese as these maniacal invaders, and it shows them laughing in their zeros as they're bombing Pearl Harbor, and it's all done in miniatures, Godzilla miniatures. This is because the American people need to see it on TV before they believe it, and this was done after the war, and just to convince the American public that the Japanese had admitted that they bombed Pearl Harbor, but the Japanese never admitted that they bombed Pearl Harbor. See him laughing. See, this is just so ridiculous. And the Japanese didn't agree with the American version until 1994. After 50 years. See, these are all miniature battleships here. This is all done in the studio. And this is just like Godzilla. Remember that movie? And so this is American propaganda to tell you that these ships were not scuttled. No, they were bombed from above, but that's not true. And so, and we got the dive bombers here, and it blows up the little models that they built here. And so, yeah, this is totally fake. And here they're laughing in their cockpit here. It's like, this is total American propaganda. And so we got the Godzilla film. We got the staged photos of dead people. We've got the lack of photos of meaningful dead bodies. We've got the people staging injuries like this. Guys staging an injury. So it looks as though they did another stunt, just like they did at Havana Harbor, right? And so we can go into the survivors of the Arizona, and Donald Stratton. This guy was supposedly sitting in an anti-aircraft position on top of the magazine. Wait, so let me show you what a real magazine explosion looks like. This is the USS or the HMS Barham. See, it flips on its side and boom, you see that massive explosion? See, that's what happens when a magazine explodes, okay? That's what a magazine explosion looks like. That's what it looks like. Boom. I mean, it just freaking is unmistakable, right? So, but that's not what they showed us with the Arizona. The Arizona looked like this. Poof. Yeah. That's supposedly the magazine exploding. Notice it didn't damage the dock area. That's a scuttling device. And supposedly these sailors were on top of the Arizona, on top of the magazine. Oh, I want you to look at the model of the Arizona. Supposedly, I believe this is the magazine that exploded right here, and it didn't damage the hull. No damage to the hull here. And so that's not a magazine explosion. Here's Donald Stratton with his pickup truck.
He points out the anti-aircraft gun right there.
See, he points to this anti-aircraft gun, which is directly above where the magazine was. Yeah, this guy wasn't sitting in that position. He would be dead. Nobody ever questioned him.
Where as a 19-year-old, he fought the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941.
Yeah, he was not sitting there. And he wrote this book, All the Gallant Men.
All the Gallant Men. It reveals things even Velma, his wife of almost...
This is his wife, Velma. And she never heard his story. After 67 years, she never heard his story until he wrote this book. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you.
67 years had never heard.
When I read the book,
Here's Velma. She looks like a man. I'm sorry.
I cried.
Of the explosion, Stratton writes, the flames found us, burning off our clothes, our hair, our skin. Men stumbled around on the deck like human torches, each collapsing into a flaming...
Men stumbled around on the deck like human torches, each collapsing into a flaming pile of flesh. Okay, well, that would be very dramatic. That would be very something you don't see every day. Did you get a picture of that? No, they did not get a picture of that.
Pile of flesh. A makeup artist's recreation
So what they
of
did,
injuries is hard to look at.
they did a makeup artist to recreate the injuries of what the sailors suffered that day. It's like, wait a minute, you had cameras there. Why didn't you take a camera of this? How come you got to bring in a Hollywood makeup artist to? I mean, this is just bullshit. It's like, you didn't take any pictures of this because this didn't exist. That's why you got to bring in a Hollywood makeup artist, because Hollywood is they're experts at creating things that don't exist, just like this, what you're looking at here. Okay.
How do you go
It never
on
existed.
fighting or trying to survive with that amount of pain?
Well, it's just self-preservation. I just pulled the skin off.
He's talking about how he pulled his skin off his arm. Okay, but there's no scars on this guy. He said he was burned over like 70% of his body and he's pulling skin off. There's no scars on this guy. There's no scars on any of these Arizona survivors.
You pulled the skin off your arms?
Well, it was burning. It was just hanging down there.
Oh yeah, it was just burning. It was just hanging down there.
And surgeries.
And there he is in the infirmary, and I don't know. I don't see no burns. So, or that's supposedly him. We can't tell if that's him or not. So, yeah, these stories from the Arizona survivors just don't make sense. And this guy says, Ken Potts, he said the bow was blown off, but we just saw from this model that the bow was not blown off. See, they describe things and which didn't happen. And then this guy describes a body being pulled out of the water and the arm falls off. Well, the reason why the arm fell off is because it was a mannequin.
We've seen men jumping off the ship into boiling oil and water, trying to make it to the beach.
There was a body in the water.
There's that Japanese pilot.
When I pulled the guy's arm, it came off.
When I pulled the guy's arm, it came off. And this guy's got an earring. See that?
Bodies lying around. So the first run, I turned him over, and the back of his head was missing. I wasn't prepared for that.
That's it.
And he smiles, of course. So, yeah, you know, we've gone through all these Arizona survivors, and their stories stink. Here's Randy Stratton. He's the son of Donald Stratton, the guy I just showed you.
Hey, I'll be willing to do this where we could get the word out. We get a site where they could click on.
And look at this guy. See, he gets to wear a USS Arizona hat. He gets to steal the valor of the USS Arizona. And he wasn't even fucking there. He's the son of the USS. This is just like the survivors of Auschwitz. See, this guy is clinging on to the story, and he wasn't even there. Okay, he's like the Auschwitz survivor. You know, they keep on going for generations and generations. The same with these Arizona survivors.
On, get a sample kit sent right to their house, have the DNA done. It's not that hard. They're making it hard. We could do this.
Now remember, 2/3 of the bodies are entombed in the battleship. We can't get to them. And so that way the Navy can conveniently just write off 2/3 of the casualties. They don't have to provide proof of any of it. But however, there are still 800 sailors that died above water, and we should have photos of those 800 dead sailors. For instance, at Hickam Field, where the Japanese supposedly were strafing the airstrip. Well, we should have photos of those dead bodies. But of course we don't, because the Navy didn't have any cameras there that day. Or more likely and more obviously, because there were no dead bodies to photograph. And that's why those photographs don't exist. So, and there's that. And we got the home movies of the
to come into the apartment for shelter, even though she'd never seen them before.
So these home movies.
Only then did Ada retrieve the camera and begin filming.
I want you to notice this is as the attack is happening. There are no there's no airplanes at all in the sky. As we watch these home movies, you don't see a single airplane in the sky. All you see is smoke coming up from the harbor, which is consistent with the Navy blowing up their own ships. Remember, these ships were obsolete. These were old battleships, and the Navy, they weren't going to be important for the battle to come. The aircraft carriers were the most important ships. And so just like Havana Harbor, the U.S. Navy is blowing up some obsolete battleships here to start a war, just like they did at Havana Harbor.
Her initial 2 shots are from the window of the master bedroom looking toward Ford Island. The first focuses on a massive plume of black smoke rising from USS California at berth F3, the southernmost berth of Battleship Row. And the second is facing straight north towards smoke clouds rising from the wrecks of USS Oklahoma at berth F5 and USS Arizona at berth F7. Ada then proceeds downstairs, walks out into the courtyard, and films one shot over the roof of the northern wing of the apartment building. The time is shortly after 9:30 a.m. on December 7th, and her shot here captures a thick cloud of black smoke from the burning Mahan-class destroyer USS Shaw. The first shot is from the window facing southwest, and the second shot
still no airplanes
is from the window facing northwest. In the distance, smoke can be seen rising from the area of Dry Dock Number 1, where USS Cassin, USS Downs, and USS Pennsylvania are burning 36. Once there, Sergeant Oberg began filming. His opening shot faces north toward hangar number 2.
Still no airplanes at all in the sky. No airplanes.
In the background 2 miles away. Then Oberg pans left to reveal even more smoke rising from the burning wreckage of the battleships USS Oklahoma.
Where's all the Japanese
USS
airplanes?
Maryland, as well as the Tennessee-class battleship USS California. As the camera continues panning, Hickam's flagpole enters the frame with the field's distinctive 171-foot-tall octagonal water tower in the background beyond it. After panning past the airfield's hospital building, the well-known 3,200-man barracks, nicknamed the Hickam Hotel, comes into view. Oberg's shot even captures bomb damage to the building's roof.
Bomb damage doesn't prove anything.
We then see smoke from
they did it. It's a controlled demolition.
Rising skyward just to the south of
no airplanes.
As the camera sweeps past hangar number 5, Douglas B-18 Bolo medium bombers can be seen mustered on the tarmac in the distance. In the foreground is the severed fuselage of B-17. Sergeant Oberg is now no longer on the roof of the operations building, but filming 2074 from the grass next to the building. Honolulu
no airplanes.
Tai Sing Liu
they blew up an American bomber. Who cares? That doesn't prove anything.
Famous image. Together, Ada and Harold Oberg had captured color footage of
notice the hand symbols here.
Sunday, December 7th, 1941.
Okay, so again, so we can go through all of those Arizona survivors and Pearl Harbor survivors we have in the past, and they're telling whoppers. And nobody demands any photographs because they did the same thing as they did at Havana Harbor to start a war. And the Japanese wanted nothing to do with starting a war with America. America wanted to start the war against the Japanese and the Axis powers. And they did so with a stunt over at Pearl Harbor, which led to the deadliest war in human history. So there you have it. That's what really happened at Pearl Harbor. The Americans started the war. The Japanese were kicking the communist ass in Asia. The Chinese were on their heels. The Chinese communists were on their heels. And so the Americans had to go save their communist friends. And the Germans were kicking the Bolsheviks' ass over there in Europe. And so the Americans had to go save their Soviet friends. And so as a result, the Americans helped the communists win in both theaters, both Asia and Europe. And now the whole world is communist. And that's why we live in a world where our media lies to us on a daily basis, because the Soviets are famous for brainwashing the population. And there's no difference between a capitalist and a communist. They're both two wings of the same bird. And so, and these Axis powers were the last stand against the evil empire. And they lost. And so now we live in this world of fake nukes, of fake outer space, and fake school shootings, and fake concert shootings, and all the other fakery they give us on a daily basis. All right. Well, thanks a lot, America. Thanks a lot. There's a lot of us who don't like this world. And so, anyway, I'll keep speaking my mind to my small little audience, and because I know you've got me shadow banned into the basement of the internet. And so I'll keep talking to the wind. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you later. Bye.